Have you ever not slept for so long that you started hallucinating? What was your experience? Yeah. After 70 hours or so, it's pretty disorienting, and rational thinking starts to get very slow. The hallucinations are not realistic, but are more like gaps in your vision that are shaped like things might see a silhouette at a distance, or briefly around a corner. Very difficult to function in this state. Would not recommend. For me, the sleep afterwards isn't very quality either. I usually wake up feeling shitty still. It feels like I'm stressing in my sleep. Indeed. Especially with caffeine, which tends to mess with your system in unpleasant ways after so many hours awake. I went roughly 4 days on 5 hours sleep total. I could function fine, but I would just constantly hear things like people mumbling right next to me. A buddy of mine landed a painting job working inside of a big commercial building, and he basically stayed in the place for 6 days straight smoking crystal meth and painting to meet his deadline and avoid hiring a crew to help him. On the 6th day the building caught fire and he ran into the lobby and was pulling people out into the streets and yelling to call 911. The fireman showed up and couldn't locate a fire because there was none. He was hallucinating. I feel like paint fumes also had something to do with it. 6 days of meth and paint fumes. No wonder he thought the building was on fire. His brain probably was. During exam week I pulled 3 all-nighters in the library between tests. The library was open 24 hours, so I'd just stay up all night making note cards then go take an exam during the day. I lived off campus and didn't want to spend the gas money. I'd go to the most isolated area, but the library would pretty much be cleared out by midnight. I started to see glimpses of people, and I thought it was a bunch of students ducking with me, but there was no one on that floor. I thought the lights went off at some point and maybe it was a sensor, so I started jumping around to reactivate it, but obviously, it was like the whole time. You stayed up for 3 days to save on gas money? Question mark. Why didn't you just nap in the library or your car? Yes, I saw shadow creatures and I thought they were out to get me. Ex-addict. Was driving home after a 3-day meth bender. Needed food so drove into a McDonald's drive-thru. When asked for my order I replied McChicken meal, please. Then they asked me against, and I said McChicken meal, please. Then they asked me again, and I was like, can't you fucking hear me? McChicken meal. And that's when I realized I wasn't actually saying anything. I was just replying in my head. I used to abuse Adderall and would stay up 3 days straight working on bullshit projects that I never finished. Anyway, one time I was at the end of a 3-day bender where I had taken about 10 days worth of Adderall. As I laid down to sleep, I started hearing my mom arguing with my brother and his girlfriend. It went on for a long time, and I was like, surely they have to be at work and this shit will end soon. Eventually my brother's baby started to cry, and the adults were too busy arguing to calm her down. I said duck that, and stormed out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and the house was completely empty. I was a passenger in a car, and looking out the window the shadows from trees would morph, and grow and move. It was kinda scary, but I enjoyed it. It was like drugs, before I did drugs. Don't do drugs. Do sleep. I'm so hooked on sleep I do it every day, mostly at night, when nobody's looking. Spent a few weeks only getting about 4 hours of sleep a night. My brain started seeing, from the corners of my eyes, black things dropping from the ceiling that looked like giant spiders. I started making sure I got enough sleep. After a while I start to become seriously paranoid and I start hearing voices and things like that. It's not very fun. I have some serious issues with sleep and sometimes it will get to the point where I will start seeing things out the corners of my eye that aren't actually happening, and I manage to scare the shit out of myself. Please get enough sleep. Don't fall into the habit of staying up for days on end. The longer you stay up, the harder it is to fall asleep. It seriously gets harder to fall asleep the longer you go, and you think you're tired, and you go to sleep, and you just can't. And the sleep isn't even that good when you do eventually fall asleep. I was like 2-day awake and every time I laid on my bed I couldn't do anything besides stare at the ceiling with my head spinning, absolutely shit-faced and exhausted, and still couldn't actually get any sleep. and the sleep is indeed shitty. You wake up with a dry mouth, dizzy, terrible headache, still feeling tired, almost like a hangover. People who are reading this and have insomnia, get help ASAP. It doesn't get better over time if you don't get help. Take care of yourselves. I hadn't slept for about 72 hours when I went to the doc gave me Ambien. I go home, get in bed and take one. A few minutes later, the floor was covered in water and the walls were melting. It was raining outside and the water on my windows was marching in formation. I've never known whether that was sleep deprivation or the effects of Ambien. I've never taken another. I was prescribed Ambien once. I took it and I could still wake up on it. But I started seeing the shadows in the corner of my room curling up and almost moving. It was freaky. I don't take Ambien anymore. I took Ambien one time and never again. Just one regular pill. I couldn't sleep in bed even after taking it, so I got up and decided to listen to music on my laptop in the living room. We had a tall 6-foot metal light to light the room and 2 songs in the metal pole became rubber and started bending and twisting all around. I thought it was cool until suddenly it started whipping at me. I swore it was trying to kill me. I ran into bed and hid under the covers as I swore I could hear metal scratching against the floor and door. Never again. I had really bad sleep problems for years. At one point I went to a party having been awake for 36 hours when arriving. I didn't really hallucinate also because I couldn't sleep. But when I finally did, I got the sleep I needed. The problem was mostly falling asleep. For me, stress and lack of sleep triggers some form of sleep paralysis and these weird dreams where I'm lying down somewhere and I can't see properly and I can't get up because everything is just so blurry and spinning around. It made me wake up in cold sweats and I remember once waking up and falling back asleep so many times because I was too exhausted to keep my eyes open that I called my mom crying because I did not know whether I was awake or not. I'm better now. I suffered from horrific insomnia about 12 years ago. I was on Lexapro, and one of the side effects is insomnia. At the time, that wasn't well documented. So I tried everything from Ambien to alcohol, so I could sleep. I would usually get about a 3-hour nap at most, before being awake again. I would go 3 to 5 days without sleeping. Eventually, I hit the point of desperation and start recreational substances to try and knock myself out. There were several occasions of hallucinations, but the one that sticks out is truly terrible. I was on day 6 without sleeping at least 5 hours. I was laying in bed and a friend came in to start talking with me. We had many great conversations since our friendship began, but hadn't talked in a while at that point. I told him how bad I was struggling and that honestly, killing myself would have been easier. He said he felt the same way many times, but that it was a terrible idea and I knew how badly it had messed up his family. When I looked at him, he was a bloody mess on the side of his face, jaw ripped apart, teeth missing, but talking to me like nothing was wrong. He had been dead for a few years at that point. Suicide. Shot himself in his garage after years of substance abuse. And I just had a 3-hour conversation with a hallucination of a dead friend. I ended up switching meds to Celexa and my sleep issues disappeared within a month. So, if you are having sleeping issues, please, go see a document. It's a dark place that damn near took me. Overseas on a deployment, started getting sleep deprived for a period of time. Started hallucinating the big date/palm trees moving across the road like in The Lord of the Rings, when the trees walk. This always makes me question some of the weird shit I saw. Was it real, or was I just really looking tired from op-tempo? I stayed up for 3 days straight when I was 17. On the 3rd day, I kept hearing people call my name, as if they wanted to ask me a question. It didn't help that I also thought it would be a good idea to go to school that day, multiple times a day. I would bolt upright and look around to see who wanted my attention, only to see my fellow students huddled over their work. It got worse as the day went. My friends were a little worried about how weird I was acting. I walked home after school, listening to my headphones as usual, but I still kept hearing someone call my name. The music made it worse. Whatever I was hearing was already kind of muffled, and having a song playing in my ears only seemed to obscure it more. When I finally got home, I told my mom I wasn't feeling well, went to my room and went straight to sleep at 4 in the afternoon. As nodded off, I heard that voice calling for me again, making me jerk out of my sleep. This repeated a couple times until I convinced myself that I already told my mom I was sick and if she really needed me, she could come get me. I finally went to sleep and didn't wake until 2 AM to use the bathroom and then went to sleep afterwards again until 9 AM the next day. I was an idiot. This is very similar to my experience at about the same age. Same amount of time awake. I've always had sleep issues, but I'll never do that again. Fucking shadow people. It's bad for you. You shouldn't do it. But if you're asking this question, you're the type to try. Remember, it's not real and relax. Go to sleep. For a while, when I was active duty, I got really paranoid about the shadow people for obvious reasons. You have no idea the relief I felt when I found out I wasn't the only one who saw them. I really thought I was losing it, but man, I was just exhausted. An ex of mine called me and asked if he could come sleep with me as he hadn't been able to sleep for days and was seeing things and he felt safe around me. As we were still friends, I said yes. When he came over, he said that he had been trying to hook up with girls but couldn't do it as their faces were turning into demons and he was afraid he would hurt them. Needless to say, I didn't sleep myself that night, and the next day we took him to the doctor for meds for his insomnia. Okay, story time. My mom suffers from narcolepsy, and one of the first treatments they gave her basically drove her also completely insane. She was up for 5 days. One day I walked into her bedroom hearing her talking to someone. I look around and ask her who she is talking to, and she tells me the lady in red. There is no one in the room at all, just us. I ask where is the lady, and she says the lady sits on the dresser and talks to her all night. I was like 14 at the time, so I went to the kitchen and hid her medicine until my stepdad got home and could take her to the hospital. The doctor was super upset about the meds her doctor had given her. It was way too much. Anyway, she stopped seeing the lady after they got all that straightened out. Edit. Alright, I'm going to say it. Wow, this blew up. Apostrophe. Thank you all for your thoughtful and kind wishes for my mom. She does have good days and bad days. Her narcolepsy is caused by a small tumor on her brain. She gets better when it shrinks, and worse when it grows. It gets to about the size of a dime sometimes. They can't remove it, but are trying to keep it shrunk with medicine. That is scary. I check her meds now every time before she takes them. Her doctors have given her meds that don't mix well 2 times now. No sleep for 4 days straight. It really fucks with your head. All sounds heightened to the maximum, and was sure I could hear all my neighbors talking shit about me. Oh god, yes. The auditory hallucinations are not fun. After 30 hours I started seeing insects on the walls and on my desk that weren't there. Might have just been the light, or paranoia because I'm massively afraid of spiders. Made it to 50 hours without really seeing anything else though. I see bugs a lot, even after just staying up late. I feel like they are the introduction to the shadow people phase. It's almost a regular occurrence for me by now, because I suffer from insomnia. There are 3 different types of hallucinations for me. 1. Funny, useless shit I know is fake. 2. Shit that could be real or not. 3. Extremely scary and traumatic shit I know is fake, but rattles me up every single time. Usually, they appear in that order. Pro tip, if you are experiencing visual hallucinations and you aren't sure whether something is real or not, take a photo with your smartphone and look at that. It is very unlikely that you hallucinate the same shit twice and in the exact same position. Works for me, at last. Edit. Holy son of a biscuit eater. This just about blew up in a matter of hours. I received a handful of genuinely interested people's questions and I'll try to answer all of them. Should I receive even more? To most of them, I already replied. We'll continue later. Because, as I'm typing this, I'm awake at an hour I should not be awake. So I'll try and get some more shooty. Imagine the irony. Can you provide examples of type listed? It's okay if you don't want to, but this sounds really interesting, and I would like to know more about your experience. I don't mind giving examples. For instance, A situation I experienced recently. I was sitting in my grandma's kitchen with my mother and granny, and we were playing cards. I was about ready to drop dead back then. First thing I saw was a big grin on the jack of spades. Not moving or anything. Just a grin. I was sure it was not real. So it was no big deal. A while later, I started to hear this soft, low-pitched humming at a decent volume. I asked my family if they heard it or not, but none of them did. This is what made me quite sure it was a hallucination as well. Fast forward to about an hour later, I'm back in my own bedroom and prepare for bed. I'm changing into my night clothes. Turn around to the wall next to my bed and see this effing huge spider. I just about screamed. I'm afraid of spiders, if that wasn't clear by now. I sprinted to the opposite side of the bedroom and tried to look at it. I was close to trying the phone trick, but there was something off about the way it moved. So I turned around, closed my eyes, counted to 3, and when I turned back around and opened my eyes, it was gone. And I know what you all gonna think now. No, I counted really fast and the next hiding place was a decent distance away. So there is no way that this was a real spider who just sneaked away. You would have found me sleeping in the living room that night if that were the case. Oh, and afterwards I remembered that, since I don't live in Australia, we don't have spiders here that are about the size of a dinner plate. Glad I don't live down under. I thought a girl was tipping over in her chair, so I rushed over and pushed her to safety. Sorry, girl in public speaking class. Circa 1999. Stayed up for 2.5 days. Saw a straight up guy walk through my apartment. Nobody was there. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.